Welcome to this usage guide for WPPluginModernizer. To get started, you can either fork the project from our GitHub repo, link in the description, or you can download the plugin from our website at WPPluginModernizer.com. In this video, we'll clone from the repo. With the package installed in our plugins directory, run Composer install to install autoload classes and external dependencies. You can also install additional external dependencies via Composer, as we do here when installing the Guzzle HTTP library. Here we create a repository interface. As you can see with WPPluginModernizer, we're able to utilize PSR4 name spacing without the need to perform any setup or configuration. Additionally, there's no need to require or include files. Composer's autoloader will resolve and autoload the class. Name spacing also prevents classes with the same name from conflicting by allowing same class names in different namespaces. Here we continue to create the repository interface. We'll code to this abstract representation of our concrete repository class, which we'll create next, which will allow us to swap concrete implementations without modifying code in higher-level dependent classes. This aligns with the dependency inversion solid design principle. Here we create a concrete implementation of the repository interface. We create repositories for data access and CRUD-related activities. In this guide, we'll be reading data from the Jiffy API. Here, we implement the interface. Here we new up an instance of the Guzzle HTTP client. Note that this is a legacy approach where dependencies are instantiated directly within a class, tightly coupling the class to the dependency. If later we needed to use a different implementation, we'd be forced to update all classes that are tightly coupled in this way, which isn't ideal. We'll fix this in a bit. Now we'll implement the search GIFs method. We've created our repository interface and have implemented it with a concrete implementation that includes the search GIFs CRUD method for reading GIFs from the Jiffy API. Now we can focus on our service, beginning with the service interface. Again, we create interfaces and code to them. Here, we implement the service interface. We'll create a service that will utilize the repository and that will contain any business logic. Here, we implement the service interface's getGIFs method. Notice that we pass the interface as the dependency rather than passing the concrete implementation. Not only can we pass the interface, but notice that we no longer need to new up or instantiate a dependency. Dependencies will be lazily auto-instantiated by the DI container. We register classes in WPPluginModernizer's registration.php file, where they'll be registered with the DI container. Again, the DI container will lazily auto-instantiate them. Notice that we specify the interface that we want to register with the container, the class to load when the interface is requested, and any parameters that we want to bind. We can also tell the container whether or not we want to use a singleton, a single instance of the class per execution cycle. Here we set up a Gutenberg block. And now we'll create a REST API endpoint for accessing our service. Notice how we can directly access our classes through the container, which will auto-instantiate it for us. We're mistakenly using the repository directly here, instead of going through the service. We'll fix this in a bit. Now we wire up the REST route we created earlier. Now we'll test the endpoint. We've received a successful response from the Jiffy API. Now we'll wire up the block to the endpoint to enable the block to make requests on form submit. We'll also modify the block so that a Jiffy can be selected and saved for display on the front end, but we'll skip through these modifications. Our block has been wired up and modified. Now let's test it. We're able to successfully request Jiffies through our block. Now we'll skip past a few additional block improvements and look at refactoring the legacy approach that we used, as well as the mistake we made where we accessed the repository directly instead of going through the service. But first, a quick demo of the final solution. We did it. Intended to access the repository through the service. Let's fix that now. Now we retest. Success. Again, notice how we request the interface as opposed to the concrete implementation. In registration.php, we tell the DI container that when we request this interface, give us the class that we specify here. Again, we pass the interface, but the DI container lazily loads and auto-instantiates the concrete class that we specify for the interface in registration.php. We also get the added benefit of being able to easily swap implementations in registration.php without having to modify any of our classes. This is because we depend on abstractions rather than implementations. We code to the interface. Again, notice that we no longer need to require or include classes like this. And we no longer need to instantiate classes like this, which is what you typically see in WordPress development. But what if we need to access functionality from another WordPress plugin that doesn't expose its functionality via hooks? Not an ideal situation, but it's possible to register external non-PSR4 classes with the DI container. We can easily register external classes with the DI container. We can get the external class from the DI container. The DI container will auto-instantiate it for us. Now let's test. We've successfully brought in and leveraged an external class through the DI container. Last thing, we need to refactor the legacy approach we used for the Guzzle HTTP client to use our more modern approach. Here, we wrap the instantiation of the class in a closure, which the DI container will call only when the Guzzle HTTP client is actually needed. That wraps up this guide on leveraging WPPluginModernizer to develop your custom plugins in a way that employs modern PHP features. No more manual class loading. Manage dependencies with the DI container. Keep your codebase organized with namespacing. Future-proof your application through dependency inversion. WPPluginModernizer, your gateway to smarter, streamlined WordPress plugin development. Thank you for watching and for joining us in pushing the boundaries of WordPress plugin development. Get your free copy of WPPluginModernizer at WPPluginModernizer.com. link in the description. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with our latest content, including updates on our upcoming Pro version that's feature-packed to further supercharge your plugin development. You can also visit us on GitHub, Twitter, and Facebook, links in the description. And please let us know what you build with WPPluginModernizer. Likewise, if you have any questions or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Happy coding!